viewers, today we will discuss the topic aging in China. Old age hath yet his honour and his toil. Although people at large tend to think of older adults as less productive employees than their younger counterparts, the opposite is true. We might wish that aging carried with it more honour than it does in a society that seems to value youth. But as Tennyson pointed out, there are many reasons that it should. The decline in the fertility rate brought about in significant measure by the one-child policy and government efforts leading up to its adoption has been a central factor in the changing age structure of the Chinese population. Greater longevity has also obviously been a key factor in population aging. The concept of aging. The aging of population, also known as demographic aging and population aging, is a summary term for shifts in the age distribution of a population towards older ages. The aging of population is often measured by increases in the percentage of elderly people of retirement ages. A related measure of population aging is the elderly dependency ratio, which is the number of individuals of retirement ages compared to the number of those in working ages. The ratio of the elderly dependent population to the economically active population is also known as old age dependency ratio, age dependency ratio, or elderly dependency burden, and is used to assess intergenerational transfers, taxation policies, and saving behavior. Another indicator of the age structure is the aging index, sometimes referred to as the elder child ratio. It is defined as the number of people aged 65 and over per 100 youth under age 15. These indicators of population aging are mere head count ratios and fail to take into account the age distribution within these large categories, in particular among the elderly. The second class of indicators for population aging is the group of statistical measures of location such as median, mean, and modal ages of population. The median age is the age at which exactly half the population is older and another half is younger. It is perhaps the most widely used indicator. Since population aging refers to changes in the entire age distribution, any single indicator might appear insufficient to measure it. The age distribution of population is often very regular, reflecting the scars of the past events, and it cannot be described just by one number without significant loss of information. Therefore, perhaps the most adequate approach to study population aging is to explore the age distribution through a set of percentiles or graphically by analyzing the population pyramids. Demographers commonly use population pyramids to describe both age and sex distributions of populations. Global aging trends. The world population continues to grow older rapidly as fertility rates have fallen to very low levels in most world regions, and people tend to live longer. When the global population reached 7 billion in 2012, 562 million were aged 65 and over. In 2015, the older population rose by 55 million, and the proportion of the older population reached 8.5% of the total population. With the post-World War II baby boom generation in the United States and Europe joining the older ranks in recent years, and with the accelerated growth of older populations in Asia and Latin America, the next 10 years will witness an increase of about 236 million people aged 65 and older throughout the world. Thereafter, from 2025 to 2050, the older population is projected to almost double to 1.6 billion globally, whereas the total population will grow by just 34% over the same period. The pace of aging has not been uniform. A distinct feature of global population aging is its uneven spread across world regions and development levels. Most of the more developed countries in Europe have been aging for decades and some for over a century. In 2015, 1 in 6 people in the world live in a more developed country, but more than a third of the world population aged 65 and over half of the world population aged 85 and older live in these countries. The older populations in more developed countries are projected to continue growing in size, but at a much slower pace than those in less developed countries, particularly in Asia and Latin America. By 2050, less than 1/5 of the world's older population will reside in more developed countries. In the less developed regions, the population aged 60 or over increased at the rate of 3.7% annually in the period 2010 to 2015 and is projected to increase by 2.9% annually before 2050 and 0.9% annually between 2050 and 2100. The Table 1 shows the changes in population parameters in China from 1955 to 2015. It can be seen that the percentage change in population over last year was 0.52% in 2015 and the corresponding figure for 1955 was 1.93%. The number of net migrants have increased from 33,000 to 3,60,000 in 2015. A negative sign prefixed with them means that more people were leaving the country than entering it over all the years shown. The median age has increased from 22 years in 1955 to 37 years in 2015. This shows a trend towards an aging society. The fertility rates, on the other hand, have declined, confirming to the theory of demographic transition. The number of children born per woman has almost reduced 3 times from 6.11 in 1955 to 1.55 in 2015. The density of population has shown a rapidly increasing trend and more than doubled to 147 per square kilometer in 2015. The Chinese economy is also rapidly urbanizing, due to which more than 50% of the population was residing in urban areas in 2015. The share of China in world population has declined to around 19% in 2015 from 23.7%. Aging trends in China. In China, the elderly people aged 60 and over numbered 41.57 million in 1950 and increased to 64.34 million in 1975, showing an annual growth rate of 1.76%. This indicates that during the period from 1950 to 1975, China's population showed a trend of being younger with a rather low growth rate and low proportion of the elderly to the total population. Change has taken place since 1975, involving a much rapid increase in China's elderly population during the years from 1975 to 1985, with an excess over the average increase rates of both developed and developing countries. In 1985, the absolute number of China's elderly people was 1.35 times as large as the 1975 size. Also, the annual growth rate of the elderly population in China, being 3.05%, was higher than those of developing and developed countries which were 2.90% and 1.12% respectively. China had the largest number of the old people, accounting for 20% of the world's elderly population in 1985. For the period from 1953 to 1987, the old age dependency ratio showed little change, while the child dependency ratio decreased substantially from 64.63% in 1953 to 45.83% in 1987 as a result of the implementation of a strict birth control policy in China after the 1970s. China is experiencing a rapidly aging population driven by lower fertility and longer life expectancy. In the 2005 to 2010 period, China's fertility rate was about 1.6, far below the rate of 1975 to 1980 and well below the replacement rate of 2.1. According to the 2010 census, China's fertility rate was 1.4. Average life expectancy in China was about 76.8 and median age in China had risen to about 35.9. In 2015, the older population in China represents 10.1% of its total population. As for the period from 2035 to 2050, both child dependency ratio and old age dependency ratio will show a declining trend. During this period, the old age dependency ratio will exceed the child dependency ratio and the elderly population will be the main burden on the society as the result of a rather high level of aging. The growth of China's elderly population will continue up to the next century, and it is estimated that people aged 60 and over in China will account for 24% of the world's elderly population in 2025, which means that the aging process of China's population will be much faster than the world average. Due to past differences in fertility and mortality levels, aging trends also differed drastically between urban and rural China. China's urban population will experience a much more rapid aging process than their counterparts. By 2025, aging level among urban Chinese will reach 20%. The table 2 shows the age structure of China across different years. The percentage lying between 0 to 14 years was around 35% in 1953 and reduced to around 33% in 1982. The working age population has increased from 59.94% in 1953 to 61.65% in 1982. During the same time, the population in age group 65 and over remained around 4%. The percentage of population was more concentrated in the age group 15 to 64 years during all 3 years, which shows greater proportion of working population. Characteristics of elderly in China. Urban-rural distribution. China has a uniquely large size of elderly population. Nevertheless, due to significant regional differences in fertility and mortality levels, as well as in geographical, climate and socio-economic development aspects, the urban-rural distribution of the elderly people is uneven. In 2001, 7.6% of the population in rural areas was 65 and over, 1.14 percentage points higher than in urban areas. By 2008, the proportion in rural areas was 8.96% and 7.18% in urban areas, a gap of 1.78 percentage points. By 2020, this gap will have risen to 3.79 percentage points as the proportion of 65 and above reaches 14.17% in rural areas and 10.37% in urban areas. Migration. The age-specific patterns have shown that the migration rate of the old people was lower than those of middle-aged and young people. The major reasons of migration of the elderly were to go and live with relatives, to seek retirement, and to migrate with their relatives. The amount of old people who migrated with their relatives increased with the increase in their age because very old people find it difficult to take care of themselves. Marital status. The marital status of the elderly population has direct impact on the life of old people. According to the third National Population Census data, out of the 76.5 million old people aged 60 over, 1.06 million old persons were unmarried, 41.42 million old persons had spouse, 33.3 million were bereft of spouse, and 0.69 million were divorced, accounting for 1.28%, 58.08%, 39.86% and 0.78% respectively. The table 3 shows the marital status of people in different age groups in 1982. It can be seen that greater percentage of males than females were single in all age groups. Starting from 50 onwards, a greater percentage of males were married than females, and this percentage reduced with the increase in age for both categories. A larger percentage of females were widowed as compared to males across all ages, and the percentage was much higher for older age groups for both categories. In case of divorce, there was not much difference across age groups and for males and females. Living arrangements. When people grow older, their ability to support themselves weakens, and they are more dependent and mostly live with married children in case of widowhood. In 1987, the three-generation family had the largest proportion, accounting for about 50% of all the families of the elderly people. The two-generation family came next, accounting for 29%. This indicates that the old people in China live by and large with children. The one-couple family accounted for 12.9% and the one-person family for 3.4%. Education. According to 1982 census data, the male illiterates accounted for 60.88% of the male population aged 60 and over, while the female illiterates for 95.43%. The very low educational attainments of the elderly in China have historical reasons. Owing to an undeveloped economy, low living standards of people in the old China, most of the people could not afford to go to school. Also, as a result of a backward way of agriculture production, the rural children had to take part in labor at a very young age instead of going to school. After the founding of the People's Republic, the government developed an anti-illiteracy campaign which has reduced the number of illiterates. Nevertheless, the high rate of illiteracy among the elderly people can hardly be changed radically. Gender composition. The proportion of those over the age of 65 has been increasing for both sexes, but it has been higher for females. In 1953, this proportion was 5.2% for females and 3.7% for males, and in 2000, it was 7.7% for females and 6.5% for males. The figure 1 shows the population pyramid in China in 1980. This pyramid shows how the youth bulge starts contracting and the base of the pyramid starts to become narrower. After this stage, the youth bulge will eventually enter the workforce and slowly it will enter the middle and older ages. The shape suggests that the percentage of population in younger age groups is beginning to decline. The figure 2 shows what the population pyramid for China can look like in 2025, where the youth bulge, which was previously created, will start entering the middle and older age. This can be seen by the longer length of bars in the Middle Ages. Policy implications. The aging of the population has an inevitable impact on the whole society, and the impact is particularly evident on medical and healthcare services. The increase in the size of the elderly will change the structure of diseases. The major economic problems brought about by the aging of the population include social security, pension system, pension of agricultural works, modification of legal age of retirement, preparations for retirement, retraining and re-employment of the old people. Policies should be worked out aiming at the solution of these problems. China's pension system has to be improved. Supporting and respecting the elderly has been the Chinese tradition. In order to improve their situation in the family, it is important to improve their economic status, their independence, and educational attainments, in addition to carrying on the Chinese tradition of respecting the elderly and loving the children. Even if the parents are living apart from their child's family, they should be encouraged to live close enough so that the soup does not get cool, in order to maintain family life yet enjoy separate household. In planning housing estates, care should be given to build two-generation houses in which habitats can maintain separate lifestyles yet live close together. Social services for the aged are all inadequate in view of current realistic needs, and the old people are mainly relying on their children for economic needs and caregiving. Therefore, there is a definite need for policy to facilitate the cohabitation of the elderly and their supporters. The figure 3 depicts the projected growth in the workforce in millions from 2010 to 2050 for several regions. Sub-Saharan Africa has the largest projected increase of 830 millions, followed by India with an increase of 317. North Africa has a projected increase of 80 million. USA shows increase of 33 million as per projections. This means that these world regions have an opportunity to create and capitalize the dividend. But as the figure shows inverted bars for China and Europe, it means that for them there will be a projected decrease of 150 and 96 million in workforce in the mentioned period. Conclusion. While the rapid aging of China's population is thought to condemn the nation to a dismal future, policies on education and new policies to improve health and foster internal migration could ease the challenges posed by an older citizenry. Recreational facilities specially designed for the elderly have to be increased and improved. Moreover, social and family services should be organized to provide daily care for the very old and physically weak old people. With this, we come to an end of today's lecture. We will meet again to explore another interesting topic. Till then, take care. Goodbye.